okay, should we start? Now we're trying to find the meaning of my name. It's not easy. So we're talking about database designing today. You already know me, so I don't have to introduce myself. But I will say a little bit more about my background. So I've been using Oracle Designer since 1996, and I've been using data modeler since 2010. And I seriously say that if you're not designing databases, it's a big mistake. Because if you design the databases, you will have less performance problems. And when you have them, it's easier to solve them when you have designed database with the documentation. So definitely worth designing databases. The only reason not to design databases is that you have something not very important in your database. And then the question is, why do you have a database? So I don't find any use case for not designing databases. That's why I think it's really important that we design databases. Once again, the ACE program slide. So why to design? I go to customers, I do consulting work, and all my customers says that data is the most valuable property in our company. Then I ask, that's great, so why are you not designing databases? Why do we need design databases? We are already designing the applications. Isn't that enough? You know, doing double work if we are designing the database as well. So why should we? Well, the point of view, as a database designer, I'm thinking about how to save and how to retrieve the data. That's my main concern. So the data is everything I care about. While as the application designer is working about your user interface, how it should like, what colors it should have, what position should it have, and so on. So we have completely different interests in our designing work. And also, as actually Sten mentioned in his presentation, was that application is changed every 18 months or something. The database is not. He said 10 years for the database. I would say it's like 20, 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. Because nobody ever has any budget for changing the database. Why would we change? We already have it in the database. So I am not allowed to make mistakes in my database designing because it will not be fixed in 18 months. It will be fixed in 20 years. And during those 20 years, everybody remembers. It was Heli who was here, and she made this mistake. So no, I can't make mistakes. So I really need to be very sharp when I'm designing the database. I can't make mistakes. And also, I need to see the whole picture. So what are we going to build? What kind of application with what kind of data are we building? When the application designer can just think about increment 1, we are going to have the customer forms, or whatever the terminology is in a company, for inserting customer data, updating customer data, and so on. I say, what about this? What about the products? What about orders? Increment 2, increment 5, don't worry. But I do worry because I need to understand the big picture. What are we doing? What is this whole project about? And what is the application we are building about? The whole picture. Then we also have different goals and different targets. We have different things in the system. Very small, tiny example, the code tables, you know, the lookup tables. I want to have them as tables because I want to have foreign key between my table and my lookup table. While as the application developer says, no, it's so much easier to have them in files. So much easier for me to handle them when they are in files. So if I'm not there to say it must be in a database, it will be in a file. And I never know even about the allowable values. So my database is not looking after anything regarding to data quality. And also, all the things that will happen later in the project, like reports and analysis and this kind of things that will be thought maybe 2 years after we actually went to production because they are not needed in the beginning of the project. I need the information now, and nobody's willing to think about it. So I really have a role in the project as a database designer because I bring different questions to the table that really should be answered already in this stage. We also have a lot of problems in designing because we are using the same words for different meanings. My favorite example is domain. To everybody, it means different things. To me, it means data type, or data type length, maybe constraints for that. To somebody else, it means something completely different. So we are very fluently discussing about domains in a project, everybody talking about completely different things. So it's sometimes causing a little bit trouble in the project and misunderstandings. And then they get even more annoyed. Why are you in the project disturbing it, making confusion? with your questions and your wrong terminology. But why do I need to model the database? Because when I started, so I've been doing this more than 20 years, I go to the first meeting with my end users, they explain me what they want. I'm very happy, I think I know exactly what they want. I go to my computer and I start designing the database and I'm like, whoops, actually I know nothing. I might know maybe 2 entities and that's about it. And I have about 100 questions. So it sounded very exact when they were telling me, but when I start to model it formally, I got a lot of questions. So I write down my questions and next meeting I ask those questions. But if I don't do the ER modeling, I have no questions because it's so clear. It sounds very clear to me until. So it is the place for me to get the questions. But it's also, when I have my ER diagram done, it is the thing that facilitates the communication with my end users. When I come to the next meeting with my 100 questions and my first draft of ER model, the conversation starts. Because I have something to show. And they can tell me how wrong I am actually, because this is not this, and that's actually that. And why do you call this like that? It should be like this. And then we are moving forward. So it's really important I have my ER diagram done. And I also understand better the requirements when I have done with my ER diagram. So how is cloud different? It's not different. We still need to design the databases. But I think because of cloud, we need to design them better. And we need to have the business logic in the database as well as we can. Because probably it's a hybrid solution. We have something on premises, something in cloud, and the data is going here and there. We have latency, we have all kind of problems with moving data from place to another. So if we design the database well, we are only moving the data that is necessary to be moved, not everything. So I think designing the database and cloud means that we need to be designing databases even more carefully. So whatever I talk today, if you are in cloud or you're planning to go to cloud, this is definitely for you. You need to design your databases. So anything you learned about database designing before, it is completely valid. Nothing has changed. But just remember it because you will need it. So what is database designing? Well, it is 4 or 5 phases of things we do again and again and again. It's requirement analysis, conceptual design, logical design, and physical design. But it's also transactional design. It's very important to design the transactions well. Because if you design them wrongly, you will not have good quality data. But in this session, I don't talk about that because usually it is application designer who's doing that job. But I hope he or she is also aware of database and how databases work. Because that is an important task. But we'll talk about these 4 steps. D and logical means that it's done in data modeling or logical design. D and relational means it's done in a relational diagram or relational model. And the physical means it's done in the physical model. That's why I put it there, so remember. Because it's a bit confusing that logical design is done in a relational model. But I've been using data modeler since 2010. I'm kind of learning it already that it's done in relational model, and it already makes sense to me. But it took me some years to get this. The names are confusing. So I'm very brave today. I'm going to demo most of the session. Let's see what happens. But anyway, it would be crazy to design databases without a tool. Having a paper and pen is simply not enough. We are so agile nowadays and so much information, paper and pen is not enough. So we really need a tool. And of course, the tool I recommend is Oracle SQL Developer Data Modeler. I think it's a great tool. It's free to use. And it's not only supporting Oracle, it's also supporting DB2, SQL Server, other technologies. So you can use it with other databases as well. It supports documenting the existing databases, so reverse engineering, as well as designing new databases. There's a good support for reporting, naming standards, glossaries, design rules, a lot of things that will give you better quality of your designs, quite automatically. It supports version control and multi-user environment, which are quite essential in nowadays database designing. And it's of course everything you need to design your databases plus some extras. So this is how the tool looks like. We have the browser, we have version control, we have messages, what's happening in the tool, we have a canvas for working. Now we have the start page here. And then we have a navigator. Navigator is for when you have a very large diagram here, you can use navigator to move to the place where you want to go and design or check it. So we start with requirement analysis. We're trying to find and analyze the requirements that these users have for the system. I'm interested about data requirements especially, but I'm also interested about functional requirements. And also requirements like security, performance, backup, this kind of things. Because this is the time when I have the end users in a table and I can ask them questions about things like this. So I want to know about everything that is somehow related to my database. Then I move to conceptual design. So in the first phase, in the requirement analysis, I try to put something in my ER diagram. But in conceptual design, I integrate all those requirements I hear to a formal ER diagram. And this is the tool for communicating with my end users. So I have my ER diagram and I update it when I talk with them. And then I also update it when I go back to my room. I collect the requirements and I analyze them. I do fact finding with different kind of tools, interviews, questionnaires, existing documentations, and recordings, which is a good tip from Dan Lindstedt, who's the inventor of Data Vault, one of the modern techniques for data warehousing. He told me that the best thing he ever invented was having a microphone in a table while having these talks with end users. Good thing, two good things about that. First one is that they take it more seriously because I might publish this conversation and the boss might hear it. So they take it more seriously because they want to be very professional. But for me, because the first time I meet them, I know nothing about this business area. They tell me a lot of things and 90% goes like this. 10% I kind of absorb, but 90% is gone. Week 2 later, if I hear the same conversation again, I understand much, much better. So I don't have to go and ask the same questions again. I can go and listen to recording. So recording is a very good tool for designing databases. So I find the data requirements, functional requirements, whatever. But whatever I do in this space, it's completely neutral to the technology. So it's just ER diagram. I'm modeling the business itself. So I'm not even telling yet that I'm going to have a relational database. I'm just modeling what is this business about, what kind of data is involved in the business, and how this data is related to each other. Completely neutral to anything. The reason I really want to do ER model, so people often tell me that it's waste of time, why you just don't do the tables immediately. The reason is, like I explained earlier already, it is my main tool. That's where I find the questions, and that's the communication mean with the end users. So it's really my main tool. If I jump straight to the tables, I will make plenty of mistakes because I think I know what I'm doing, but I don't. So really ER is my favorite tool. It gives me the ability to really do my work well. I can't jump to tables immediately. I can also do data flow diagrams, which is a good tool for understanding the processes, how the data flows, and so on. But in many of the projects, they say, no, that's not your job. The application designer will do that. So just don't worry about it. So I have given up with that if it's a big argue, but I don't give up with my ER diagram. That's something I really need to do. Otherwise, the database will be cracked. So that is a mandatory thing. When you're doing the conceptual design, use right terminology and clear names. Don't try to be smart and tricky. Just be very, very easy with things. So use the right terms. Be consistent with everything you do. And make sure that you communicate with the end users because communication is key to success. Try to find the main concepts. and how they're related to each other. Because it's always difficult to, if you end up having a wrong kind of table that must be split to 2 or 3 or whatever, it is not easy to do. So try to find the concepts, the main concepts, how they're related to each other. It's always easy to add attributes and so on, but it's not easy to tier the concepts separately. So that's the main thing in this case. It is difficult because the spoken language is not exact, and because most of those very important things are not told because everybody knows them, except me. I'm not a business expert. I have no knowledge about this business at all. So I should be told everything. I'm like a kid. Tell me everything because I don't know anything yet. But everybody knows it, so why to tell? And the thing is that at this stage, we don't know one important thing: how the data will be retrieved. What kind of reports, what kind of analytics will be used and so on. Nobody knows. And that's very important to me to understand so I know how to solve problems. But it's mandatory to model anyway, even though we have some problems here, because if we don't do it, we don't have the questions to ask. And if we don't ask them, nobody will, because everybody else has different interests in the project. But let's go to the logical model. Here we go. Oops, wrong tool. So the tool I use for database designing is Data Modeler. So this is also integrated in SQL Developer, but I don't like to use the integrated tool because I have to always go to menu and find something and then finally find the thing. So this one is so much easier. I find everything with just 1 or 2 clicks. So for database designing, I use the standalone version. And in the end of the session, when I'm finally building my database, I'm using SQL Developer. But for designing, I only use this. Let's start my logical model. I right-click in the browser and I say Show. So here are the tools I can use with ER diagram. The good thing with the tool is, because it knows that I'm doing ER diagram, it only lets me do what's allowed in ER diagram. So it's not a drawing tool, it's really a modeling tool. That's the difference with some other tools. By the way, this word drawing, even though I'm doing ER diagram, when I talk with my end users, I don't say ER diagram because it sounds technical. I say drawing. So we always talk about my drawing. This is my drawing. What do you think about it? Is it correct? What should we change? Because drawing sounds like it's something non-technical people can work with. So that's my keyword for my drawing. So if I call it a drawing, don't be offended. It's still an ER diagram. So I start with my entities. This one here is new entity. I click here and I will create, an entity. Another one. And I will have customers, of course. I will have products. I will have product groups. So this is what I managed to learn when I'm having the session with my end users. Whenever they have, I'm characterizing a little bit now, whenever they say a substantive, what is substantive? Yeah, is that an English word for it? Noun.
No.
Noun. Whenever they say a noun, I'm like, entity. Whenever say a verb, relationship. So this is how I work. So I heard so many nouns. Then I go back here and I try to understand how these nouns are related to each other. So I have customers, orders, order lines. Oops, order lines. One day I will buy a mouse, but not today. I still struggle with this. So I know these are the things that I have something to do with it. I know a customer might have an order, but if I have an order, it must have a customer. So customer can have several orders, but if I have an order, it must have a customer in the other end. Okay, customer, what does the customer have? Customer has a customer number, which is, in my case, it's probably, now I realize my customers have surrogates. They don't have natural keys as primary keys. So I know I need a surrogate. Then I'm thinking, surrogate in this company should be number 16. But I don't want to define every time number 16. So I stop here and I go back to tools and I say domains administration. I want to define a domain surrogate. So whenever I define a surrogate key, I will use this as a data type. So now I define it here. I say add and I define it. Close. Okay, so I have a customer number, which is domain surrogate. It's a primary key. Then the customer has name. Then I realize I always have names everywhere, so I need a domain for name as well. I define the name. I have done it already, so I just use here customer name. And I use again a domain name. And this is definitely mandatory. I might have some other attributes for it too, but this is what I have so far. Then I have my orders. They have order number. This is not the kind of surrogate thing. This is actually varchar 2. It's P012344, something like that. This is what I learn when I talk with my end users. I say, is it running number, 1, 2, 3? No, it's PO. Oh, okay, good, thank you. And then I say it's varchar, and then I try to understand how long. They tell me it's maybe 6 jars. It is the primary key. Then they tell me it's always important to know the date when the order is made. Okay, I need the date, not data, date. Here, it's mandatory, always must be there, so it's mandatory. That's it. Then I have my order lines. Each line has the order line number. Just put line number. Actually, I can use the surrogate here. I don't have to. I can just say it's number something, but I'm lazy. I use the surrogate. Then how many products being ordered? Number. This is also mandatory. Okay. Also, order has order lines, but order line is a weak entity, which means it cannot exist without order. That's why I select identifying. In my drawing, I will see here with this line. So that means it's a weak entity. So when I have orders, order line cannot exist without order. So orders might have order lines, but order line must always have an order. And the primary key for this one will be order number and line number. Okay. Then I have my product groups. Oh, I will start with the attributes first. My product group has a name. e.g. name now, which is type of name, and it's the primary key. And actually I don't have anything else for that. Then I have my products. Again, I have a long discussion. What is the product number? I know they have product numbers, but is it something we specify in our company? Does it come from another vendor, or where does the product number come? Is it something I can use as a primary key? Because if it comes from somewhere else, I have 3 vendors selling me something, and they all accidentally use the same product number 1. And it wouldn't work. But if it's something I can control myself, that's a fine primary key. But now I can't be sure, so I define it as a surrogate key, because it could be coming from different systems. So after a long discussion, I end up having surrogate key for my products. They also have product name. You already remember I have my name here. And they also have the price. And because I know how difficult it is to define always how much is money, is it 15.2, is it 17.3, what's the length? I know it's number, but how long? I predicted that and I defined a domain called money. So whenever it's anything to do with money, I use this domain. Okay? And now I just need to tell that product group can have several products, but product only belongs to one group. And I also tell that one product can be in several order lines, while an order line can just have one product in it. So I have designed my database. I'm quite happy. Here it is. And now I can start talking with my end users again, and we continue fine-tuning. But for us, this is perfect database now. We are very happy with it. So we ended up having an ER diagram, which is exactly what this particular project needs for data requirements. A problem with my drawing might be that they don't like the notation because it's hard to understand. So for me, this is the best notation because this is the one I usually use. But my end users are saying it's very hard to read. So I just go to notation and I change to Bachmann. This might be easier for them to read. Or if it's not, I can change to information engineering, which might be easier for them as well. So depending what is the easiest notation to read, I change and we continue talking. But for me, this is my favorite. I think it tells more. But so easy to change if that is the problem with my designing. We already saw how to define domains. I put everything here in a slide so you can check later. You don't have to remember what I've been talking. Then we have the design properties. So in data modeler, there's two things. There's preferences. When I change preferences, it affects what I do in this computer. So if he's working on his computer, he wouldn't know because I only change here. If I give my preferences to his computer, he will have the same. All my designs here will have those same preferences, but he will have his. But then we have design properties. Design properties are design bind. So I have a design here I'm working with, and I have changed my design settings. He works with my design, he has the same settings. He doesn't have to change anything because it's already in the design. So things that are design settings are like naming standards. I can define what's the separator for logical model. So I have a space here. Then I have defined for relational model, it's this underscore. So when I generate from name, which has the space in logical model, it will add the underscore when it goes to relational model automatically because that's what I have told the tool. But you can define whatever you want to define there. The most important thing here, I think, is the templates. The templates tell the tool whenever you are doing something automatically, creating foreign key column, creating surrogate primary key, creating something, this is how I want you to call it. This is my standard for the namings that you will do automatically. This is something you have to think very carefully because this is your standard. You can use the ones that are already in the tool if you don't have your own standard. But if you have your own standard, go here and change the ones that you want. I mentioned the preferences, the computer-wide thing. Examples are like relational cardinality. Will the source be optional or not? Will the target be optional or not? This is how I have defined for mine. So different kind of things in preferences and in design settings. And by the way, the design properties in 17.3, the latest version, we have the same thing also here as design level settings. Design properties and design level settings is exactly the same thing. So I can either change it here, double clicking or right clicking and selecting properties. I can go and change my design properties, or I can go to tools, design level settings and change here. Now you already probably noticed this. So I said, whatever I change in these is only for this particular design, none other designs. But if I have a very good set of design settings done here for this design, and I want the same for all my future designs, I will click this. And those settings are automatically used for my next designs. Yes?
So you can define your domains?
Yes.
For the domains will be used in the future.
Domains are used everywhere anyway. So domains, we didn't see yet, but also things that you find from the tools menu. Usually things you find from here are already in your computer because they are stored in, okay, I will show you something. So they are stored in this directory. So if you have defined here a directory, they are always there, and every design is using the same things from there. But if I have defined particularly for a design, in the design properties, it's only for this design, unless in general I say, settings here, I say for all my designs. Then they will be copied to the other designs. Yes. So I'm done with my logical design. I have my ER design, it takes more than 8 years to learn it. I'm done with my conceptual design with the logical model. I'm moving to logical design with relational model. See? So in the relational model, the idea is to have the relational view of what I just designed in the ER model. So when I go to logical design, I'm already telling I'm going to have a relational database. I don't know if it's going to be Oracle or DB2, SQL Server, whatever. I know it's relational. So I move from logical to relational. Do I have a demo? No, I put some extras here. So I can use transformations either during this move from ER to relational, or I can apply them later. In Stan's presentation, you heard about JavaScript. JavaScript is what I use here for transformations. So one example is, do I have a slide about that? Yes. One example of this transformation is adding technical columns. So in my entity relation model, I didn't want to add creator, create date, modifier, modified date, this kind of attributes because I have them all my tables. And what's the point of showing that to my end users because it's technical columns. So I can add those when I'm moving from logical to relational. By telling here, I have a template table where I have added all the columns I want to add to my table. So use that, and for each of my tables, add those columns. Or I can tell the tool, for these 3 tables, add those columns. The rest of the tables, just transfer them as they are. So an easy way of doing that. Let's go to the demo. So this is going to be very, very difficult. I will press the button here. I will say engineer to relational. I can check here what will happen. It will tell me you will have these entities that has never been created as tables. Would you like to do that? I can even check. This is the place where you can, by the way, use the template table to add the columns, but I don't do it now. You can define many things here as well, but I just want to very simply create the tables. I say engineer. Here we go. So as you can see, my main work was creating the ER diagram. After that, I'm just generating the tables. Now I have the relational tables for my ER diagram. What I can do here, I will show the slides here. Don't have too much time. What I do here, I now check that the tables are what I wanted. The primary keys are what I wanted, the foreign keys are what I wanted, and so on. I might add some indexes manually for each of my table, or automatically using the design properties to say that primary key constraints should have indexes, foreign keys should have indexes, and so on and so on. If I select the automatically, it will not add these indexes in my design, but when I'm generating the DDLs, it will be inside the DDL clauses. I will have the create index clauses as well. So depending which way I want to work, I choose one of these. But then I'm ready to go to the physical model. And this is the point when I tell the tool it's going to be Oracle 12.2, or it's going to be SQL Server 2012, or whatever technology I choose. So this is the time when I decide what it will be. Oops, wrong one. So here, when I change my logical, I always have to remember to press this button to get my changes to the relational. That's clear for everybody, okay? But when I work with my physical, it's under relational here. I once created by selecting new. Selecting is 12.2, and that's it. I have my tables here. If I have new tables in my relational model, they will be automatically in the physical model. If I add new columns to my relational model, they will be here automatically. So from relational to physical, I don't have to do anything, except the physical properties. So depending what I chose here, so I can create several physical models for my relational. I have two customers now. One of them is SQL Server 2012 and one is Oracle 12.2. So I create a physical model for both of them. This is a SQL Server customer. So now if I go and check what kind of physical properties does a table have. This is a SQL Server. This is create table blah 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 kind of clause for SQL Server. And if I do the same for my Oracle, where's my table? This is the properties for Oracle. Create table blah 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 for Oracle. So depending what physical model I chose, I have different properties that I have to fill up. In the physical model, typically, now I go to slides so I won't run out of time, I usually and definitely will define the physical properties like tablespaces, uses, privileges, storage, that kind of things. I can set up tablespaces. I have 100 tablespaces I create here. I can set up the properties for one of my tablespaces and copy those properties I like to my other tablespaces using this propagate properties button. I can set defaults in the preferences, saying that whenever there's a new table coming to an Oracle physical model, use this tablespace, this user, this kind of template for indexes, this kind of template for tables. So I don't have to go and manually every time do things. Then we go to DDL. Oh, I have this transformation thing. So I mentioned the transformations earlier. From logical to relational, I can use transformations to automatically do something to my design. But there's another transformation too, the table DDL transformations. Also JavaScript, but that's something I can use when I'm generating the DDLs. Let's say I want to have DDLs for MySQL, but it's not officially supported here. I can use these transformations to transform those SQLs, the kind of DDL that MySQL understands. Now I need some water before I start coughing too much. It's good to have water here. Yes. So all these transformations are JavaScript. And I'm very lucky to have my son who's very good with JavaScript. So I always ask him if I need anything with JavaScript. The demo. So I have defined all the physical properties now, depending whatever technology I chose. And my database is designed. I did the logical, relational, and physical. And I'm ready to create the database. File, export, DDL file. I might have several physicals. I select the one I want. I want to have Oracle 12.2 generate. I might want to choose which tables. Maybe I don't want to have all the tables. Maybe I just want to have some of them. Maybe some primary keys, maybe not all of them, whatever. I can choose here. At this point, I suddenly remember I didn't check the design rules. So I have very strict design rules in the company that should be obeyed before any database is created. Now I suddenly remember it when I see this button here. Oh dear, I have to check. Let's check. Oh goodness, I see red. So I have a customers table that doesn't have RDBMS comment defined, which is mandatory in my company. Oh goodness, I should do something with that. Okay.
Just like in real one life.
Yes.
So
this is finished, yes. So all the red ones must be fixed before I can go to production with this. It happens to be the same problem with all my tables. Goodness, how did I fail this badly? Here we go. Now I have caps on, so this will be with caps. Okay, let's try again. Come on. Okay, I have to start it again. Design rules, apply all. Why is it showing again? Okay, I don't know what happened. But anyway, I have reds that are mandatory to fix, and I have blue ones that is nice to fix if I have the time. And it's giving me the exact description what's wrong with that. But now I just fixed everything, and I'm happy with it, and I can continue with my DDLs. I can, by the way, I can even generate the REST services if you want to use the wonderful mobile functionalities that are not allowed to use tables, but I can create REST services here if I want to. By just clicking this, it will create me the REST services. I can generate my DDLs in separate files, which means that I will have a folder structure where I have table A, table B, indexes, and so on in separate files. Or if I don't choose this one, I will just have one file created. I'm happy with one file. I can have regular DDL or I can have interactive. Regular is fine. So I don't change anything, I just say give me the DDL. I get the DDL. I'm happy at the point. Usually I don't have any access to production, but this time I'm lucky I have the access to production as well. So I will go to my SQL developer, and I have my script somewhere here. Let's go. I usually have my autonomous DBA with me who's doing this, but at this point I need to do myself. So I will spool, set echo on, and I will execute the DDLs I just created. That's it. And now I'm using SQL Developer. Oh, are we done? We have the tables, we have the customer, and so on. We have indexes that we have defined, using the naming standards I have defined in the tool, and so on. So we have database created. Design rules, you remember, fixing things. Very cool thing is comparing things. You can compare two designs to each other. What's the difference between version 5.0 and 7.5? You can compare a design to a database. Has anybody changed the database without telling me? Or do I have any changes in design I forgot to implement in the database? So you can compare them to each other. I put the instructions here how to do it. The preferences for any kind of things, this is definitely worth it defining. Where do I save anything and where does the tool find whatever? DDL generation is typically something you want to go and change the preferences because probably the default DDLs are not what you like. So you want to go and change some of the preferences to get different kind of DDLs. You might want to define preferred logical data types because you saw the list was very long. You can define here what are your preferred ones, and when defining the attribute data type, you can just select from the preferred list. Version control is supported. I put some slides about version control here. I don't talk about version control more, but just that you see how it works. And just a conclusion. So to be able to connect to the database, I use SQL Developer. And to really create the database objects, I use SQL Developer. But to design the database, I use SQL Developer Data Modeler standalone version, as well for designing the data architecture. Good tool, good support for interactive processes, enables documenting, enables versioning and multi-user environment, and also enables comparing things. Free to use, supports also other databases, not just Oracle, and why not to use it? Am I on time? 1 minute left for questions. See, I can speak very fast if needed. Any questions?
När Subversion kommit med? Oj, sorry.
Yes.
When Subversion came to SQL Developer?
Long time ago. I think it was version 1 of the beginning.
Okay.
3, maybe. So the thing is, only Subversion is supported. None of the other tools like Git, it's not supported. It is supported in SQL Developer, but not in Data Modeler. So
Yeah,
I would expect it will be there one day, but not yet.
You said that you didn't have support for MySQL?
No, not officially. And I have asked why, and I've been told people have not been asking for it. I don't know. Maybe they've been asking something else more. I don't know. But it can be handled with these transformation things. So it is doable still, because it's close enough to other SQL dialects. So yes, you can make it support other brands as well.
Generally, the Oracle tools don't offer MySQL as an option
No.
because it's straight up competing.
Mhm.
So you have to use a SQL 92 standard stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
One more question. Have you tried Toward
Toad.
yes, Toward Data Modeler?
No. I was using Designer for many years, and then I was thinking, what should I do next? Because I got very annoyed because Designer was not supporting any of the new features. It was very annoying to design a database without being able to design things that are in a database. And then I started evaluating tools, and that was actually the time when Oracle bought this tool that turned out to be Data Modeler. It was called something else that time, I can't remember what it was. But I found the tool before Oracle found it. So I saw the tool somewhere. I was thinking, this is actually a great tool. And less than 6 months later, I heard Oracle bought it. I was like, okay, sounds good. And what I like best with Data Modeler is the team that is working on it, especially Philip from Bulgaria, who's an amazing guy. So whenever there's something that I need in a tool, I explain it to him, and it's there. So I really like the team. They are so great and so supportive. Yeah, the whole team, but especially Philip. He's my best friend nowadays. Yeah, I was thinking when I was writing my book, he will hate me eventually because I emailed him every day. Because I usually worked during evening and nights, and Philip is in the same time zone with me. So I was emailing the whole night him, I found a bug here and there, blah, blah, blah. So I was thinking he will hate me, but no, he liked me. And he fixed whatever I found. So I was so happy. So it's a great team. It's very fun to work with a tool that has a great team that understands what you are trying to do with the tool and not just giving you stupid advice like, have you ever tried rebooting your computer? So I never get this kind of stupid things. It's always something that is very good at helping me. So I like it a lot. Thank you so much. Any questions? I'm here anyway.